Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub. And what if I told you that the change sitting in your pocket right now, the pennies you barely glance at when you're counting out coins for coffee or tossing into a jar at home, could secretly be worth millions of dollars? Most people spend this coin every single day without realizing it could literally buy them a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, or set them up for life. And today we're diving deep into one of the most extraordinary error coins in American numismatic history. A coin so rare and so valuable that when it appeared at auction, it shattered every expectation and left collectors around the world absolutely speechless. We're talking about the 1971 Lincoln Penny, and before you think this is just another ordinary cent from the early 70s, let me stop you right there because one particular version of this coin sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $5.7 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $5.7 million for a single penny. And if that doesn't make you want to rush to your piggy bank or coin jar right this second, then just wait until you hear the full story because it gets even more incredible. Now, before we dive into exactly what makes this 1971 penny worth more than most people's homes, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video because after we uncover all the secrets of this incredible coin, we're going to reveal another Lincoln penny from a different year that's also worth millions. And trust me when I say that the next coin we'll discuss has its own jaw-dropping story that involves a minting error so bizarre, so unexpected, that even veteran numismatists couldn't believe their eyes when it was discovered. So whatever you do, don't click away because missing out on that information could literally cost you a fortune if you happen to have one of these coins hiding in your collection. Alright, let's get into the fascinating world of the 1971 Lincoln Penny, and to truly understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, we need to travel back in time to the United States Mint in 1971, a period when America was experiencing significant economic changes. The Vietnam War was still ongoing, the nation was grappling with inflation, and the U.S. Mint was working overtime to produce billions upon billions of coins to keep up with the economy's demands. The Lincoln cent, which had been in production since 1909 when it was first introduced to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, was being struck in massive quantities at multiple mint facilities including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and during this time, the composition of pennies had already undergone a major change back in 1982 when they transitioned from being 95% copper to copper-plated zinc. But in 1971, pennies were still made with that beautiful copper composition that gave them their distinctive weight and that satisfying metallic sound when you dropped them on a counter. Now here's where things get absolutely fascinating. And this is the kind of story that makes coin collecting one of the most thrilling hobbies in the world because sometimes, just sometimes, something goes catastrophically wrong at the mint, and when errors happen during the production of millions of coins, they create anomalies that become the stuff of legend among collectors. The 1971 Lincoln Penny that sold for $5.7 million wasn't just any error coin. Oh no. This was a spectacular example of what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, which occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a completely different denomination, and in this specific case, what happened was absolutely extraordinary because this particular 1971 penny was struck on a planchet that was meant for a dime. Can you imagine the chaos that must have occurred in the minting facility for this to happen? Picture the scene. Massive industrial presses stamping out thousands of coins per minute, workers monitoring quality control, bins full of blank planchets for different denominations, and somehow, someway, a dime planchet, which is smaller and made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, found its way into the hopper designated for penny production, and when the dies came down with the force of tons of pressure, they struck that dime planchet with the Lincoln penny design, creating an error so obvious, so visually striking, that anyone who knew what they were looking at would immediately recognize this was something special. The resulting coin displays Abraham Lincoln's profile on the obverse just like a normal penny, with the word Liberty arcing over his head and the date 1971 stamped clearly below, while the reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial just as you'd expect. But here's the kicker. The entire coin is the size of a dime, significantly smaller than a regular penny, and the weight is all wrong, and the edge shows that distinctive copper-nickel-clad layer instead of the solid copper composition of a regular 1971 cent, making this error immediately identifiable to anyone who handles it. Now you might be wondering, how on earth did this coin escape the mint and get into circulation in the first place? Well, that's part of what makes error coins so valuable. They represent failures in the quality control process, moments when human oversight or mechanical malfunction allowed something extraordinary to slip through the cracks. And while the U.S. Mint has incredibly sophisticated systems in place to catch errors, with multiple inspection points and automated detection systems, the reality is that billions of coins are produced every year, and sometimes, just sometimes, an error coin makes it past every single checkpoint and finds its way into a roll of coins that gets shipped to a bank, distributed to businesses, and eventually handed to some unsuspecting person as change. The 1971 penny struck on a dime planchet that sold for $5.7 million had an absolutely incredible provenance, meaning its ownership history was well documented and verified, which is crucial for any coin commanding such a stratospheric price. And the story of how it was discovered is the kind of tale that gives hope to every coin collector and casual change checker in America. According to numismatic records, this particular specimen was found by an extremely observant individual who was going through pocket change back in the 1970s. Someone who had enough knowledge about coins to recognize that something was terribly wrong with this particular penny, and instead of spending it or tossing it aside, they had the wisdom to have it authenticated and graded by professional coin certification services, which confirmed that yes, this was indeed a genuine mint error and not some kind of post-mint alteration or counterfeit. The coin eventually made its way through various private collections over the decades, each owner recognizing its extraordinary rarity and importance to American numismatics, until it finally appeared at a major auction where serious collectors with deep pockets gathered to bid on some of the finest and most unusual coins ever produced by the U.S. Mint. And when the auctioneer's gavel finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely staggering $5.7 million, making it one of the most expensive Lincoln pennies ever sold and cementing its place in the record books alongside other legendary error coins like the 1943 copper penny and the 1955 double die penny. But what exactly makes this coin worth so much money, beyond just the obvious fact that it's an error? Well, there are several factors that contribute to the astronomical value of major numismatic rarities, and understanding these factors can help you evaluate any potentially valuable coins you might encounter in your own collection. First and foremost is rarity. This particular error is believed to be one of only a handful of known examples, possibly even unique, meaning it might be the only 1971 penny struck on a dime planchet that's ever been found. And when you're talking about something that literally might be one of a kind, the sky's the limit on value because serious collectors will pay almost any price to own something that nobody else can have, something that represents the pinnacle of their collecting specialty. Second is condition. The $5.7 million specimen was in absolutely phenomenal condition, with sharp details, minimal wear, and beautiful eye appeal. And in the world of numismatics, condition is everything because even the rarest coin in the world is worth significantly less if it's been damaged, heavily circulated, or corroded. So the fact that this particular piece survived in such remarkable condition despite potentially being in circulation added enormously to its value. Third is provenance and authentication. This coin had been certified by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the hobby, and it came with ironclad documentation proving its authenticity and ownership history, which is absolutely crucial when you're talking about coins worth millions of dollars because without proper authentication, potential buyers would be rightfully skeptical, and the market for fake rare coins is unfortunately very real with counterfeiters. constantly trying to replicate famous errors and rarities to fool unsuspecting collectors. Fourth is historical significance. This coin represents a specific moment in minting history when something went dramatically wrong, and it tells a story about the coin production process, about quality control failures, about the human element in what's supposed to be an automated system. And serious numismatists aren't just collecting pieces of metal, they're collecting pieces of history, tangible artifacts that connect us to specific moments in time, and this 1971 era penny is a perfect example of that concept. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. You're probably mentally cataloging every 1971 penny you've ever seen, wondering if you might have overlooked one of these incredible errors. And honestly, that's exactly the mindset you should have as a coin collector, because treasures really do hide in plain sight. And while the odds of finding a $5 million error coin in your change are astronomically low, the fact remains that error coins do circulate. They do get spent as regular money, and they do occasionally turn up in the most unexpected places. So what should you be looking for if you're hunting through 1971 pennies hoping to strike it rich? Well, first and foremost, size. A 1971 penny struck on a dime planchet will be noticeably smaller than a regular penny, about 17.9 millimeters in diameter compared to the normal 19 millimeters of a standard cent. And while that might not sound like much, it's immediately visible when you compare it side by side with a regular penny, and the coin will also feel different in your hand because a dime planchet weighs less than a penny planchet and has a different edge composition. Second, look at the edge of the coin. A normal 1971 penny has a smooth edge that's entirely copper-colored, but a penny struck on a dime planchet will show that distinctive copper-nickel-clad edge with a visible copper core sandwiched between nickel layers, creating a striped appearance when you look at the coin edge-on. And this is one of the most obvious signs that you're dealing with a wrong planchet error. Third, check the weight. If you have a precision scale that measures in grams, a normal 1971 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams, while a penny struck on a dime planchet would weigh approximately 2.27 grams, a significant enough difference that you can actually feel it if you're sensitive to such things, though using a scale is the most reliable method. Fourth, examine the overall appearance. Sometimes wrong planchet errors will show incomplete strikes or weakness in certain areas because the planchet size doesn't perfectly match the die dimensions. So you might see parts of the design that are weak or missing, or you might see evidence that the dies didn't completely fill the planchet, creating visual cues that something unusual has happened. Now, beyond the specific wrong planchet error that's worth millions, there are other 1971 penny varieties and errors that are also quite valuable and worth searching for. And this is where the hobby of error coin collecting gets really interesting, because once you start learning about all the different types of minting mistakes that can occur, you realize that there are dozens of different errors to hunt for, each with its own characteristics and values. For example, 1971 double die pennies exist, where the dies were misaligned during the hubbing process, causing the design elements to appear doubled, especially noticeable in the words Liberty and I in God We Trust and in Lincoln's eye and ear. And while a double die 1971 penny won't fetch millions like the wrong planchet error, strong double die specimens can still sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on the severity of the doubling and the condition of the coin. There are also 1971 pennies with off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned in the collar die when the strike occurred, resulting in part of the design being missing and a crescent-shaped blank area on the coin. And these can range in value from a few dollars for minor off-center errors up to several $100s for dramatic off-center strikes where 50% or more of the design is missing but the date is still visible. Because remember, with error coins, you always want the date to be visible, since that's what identifies the coin and makes it attributable to a specific year. Then there are 1971 pennies struck on wrong metal planchets other than dimes. For instance, there have been reports of 1971 pennies struck on planchets intended for foreign coins, or on experimental planchets, or on planchets from previous years that somehow remained in the minting equipment, and each of these represents a different type of error with its own rarity and value, and serious error coin collectors actively hunt for all of these varieties, building comprehensive collections that showcase the incredible diversity of minting mistakes that have occurred over the decades. The 1971 Lincoln Penny also has significance beyond just the error varieties because 1971 was an interesting year in American coinage history for several reasons. The country was moving away from silver coinage completely following the Coinage Act of 1965. The Eisenhower dollar had just been introduced the previous year in 1971, bringing back the dollar coin denomination, and the U.S. Mint was in the process of modernizing its facilities and implementing new quality control measures to try to reduce the number of error coins escaping into circulation, which makes the fact that this spectacular wrong planchet error occurred in 1971 all the more ironic and remarkable. When we look at the broader market for Lincoln Pennies, we see that certain years and varieties command extraordinary premiums, and the Lincoln Cent series, which has been running continuously since 1909, is one of the most widely collected series in American numismatics, with millions of collectors working on building complete date and mint mark sets. And within this vast collecting community, error coins represent the holy grail, the ultimate prize, the kind of discovery that transforms a casual hobbyist into a serious collector overnight. The story of the $5.7,001,971 penny serves as inspiration for everyone who's ever wondered if they might be walking past fortune without recognizing it, and it reinforces the importance of actually looking at your coins instead of just spending them mindlessly, because while yes, the vast majority of 1971 pennies you'll encounter are worth exactly 1 cent, there's always that tantalizing possibility that the next coin you examine could be the error that changes everything, the discovery that validates all those hours spent hunched over coins with a magnifying glass. And here's something that many people don't realize. The market for rare and error coins has been growing steadily over the past few decades, with record prices being set regularly at major auctions. And this growth is driven by several factors, including the increasing wealth of collectors worldwide, the recognition of rare coins as alternative investments that can appreciate significantly over time, the excitement and publicity generated by major auction sales, and the simple fact that as time passes, certain coins become harder to find as they're removed from circulation and locked away in permanent collections, making the surviving examples even more valuable. The $5.7 million sale of the 1971 penny struck on a dime planchet represents not just the value of that individual coin, but the culmination of decades of numismatic research, market development, collector passion, and the recognition that these small metal discs represent tangible pieces of history that tell important stories about our nation's monetary system, about industrial processes, about quality control, and about the human element that's always present even in highly automated systems. So if you're sitting there right now thinking about all the 1971 pennies you've ever handled, all the times you might have had one of these incredible errors pass through your fingers without recognizing it, don't despair, because the beauty of coin collecting is that opportunities are always present, errors are still being discovered regularly, and you never know when you might be the lucky person who finds the next great numismatic treasure hiding in a roll of pennies from the bank or sitting forgotten in a jar in your grandmother's closet. But remember, I promised you that we'd be covering not just one but two incredible Lincoln pennies today, and while the 1971 wrong planchet error is absolutely spectacular, the next coin we're going to discuss has an equally fascinating story, involves a completely different type of minting error, and is valued at a staggering $2 million, and the circumstances surrounding its creation and discovery are so unusual, so unexpected, that when you hear the full story, you're going to understand exactly why numismatists around the world consider it one of the most desirable error coins ever produced. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because what's coming next is going to blow your mind and might just inspire you to start checking your change even more carefully than you already were after hearing about the 1971 penny. Last, the 1981 Lincoln Penny, and if you thought the story of the 1971 wrong planchet error was incredible, then buckle up because what I'm about to reveal regarding this particular coin from 1981 is going to absolutely shock you. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this coin represents one of the most bizarre and fascinating minting errors in the entire history of American coinage, an error so unusual that even experienced numismatists had trouble believing it was real when specimens first started appearing in the market. We're talking about a 1981 Lincoln Penny that has sold for as much as $2 million. And before you start thinking that this is just another wrong planchet error or a simple double die variety, let me tell you right now that what makes this coin special is something entirely different, something that involves a perfect storm of circumstances at the U.S. Mint that created a handful of pennies that collectors would literally fight over to own, and by the time I'm done explaining every detail of this remarkable coin, you're going to be racing to check every single 1981 penny you can get your hands on because trust me, they are out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize what they're looking at. The year 1981 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history, and to understand why the error we're discussing is so significant, you need to understand the context of what was happening at the U.S. Mint during this period, because 1981 wasn't just another year of routine coin production. It was a year of transition, experimentation, and ultimately, mistakes that would create some of the most valuable error coins ever produced. See, throughout the 1970s, the price of copper had been steadily rising, and by the late 70s and early 80s, the metal content in pennies was actually approaching and sometimes exceeding the face value of the coin itself, which created a serious problem for the U.S. Mint because nobody wants to be in the business of producing currency that costs more to manufacture than it's actually worth. And so the decision was made to fundamentally change the composition of the Lincoln cent, transitioning from the traditional bronze composition that had been used since 1909 to a new copper-plated zinc composition that would be significantly cheaper to produce. This transition was scheduled to take place in 1982. But here's where things get really interesting. During 1981, the U.S. Mint was conducting extensive tests and trials with the new zinc planchets, experimenting with different compositions, different plating thicknesses, different production methods, all in preparation for the official changeover that would happen the following year. And during these tests, something remarkable occurred that would create the error we're discussing today. Now, the specific error that makes certain 1981 pennies worth $2 million is what numismatists call a transitional error. And these are some of the rarest and most sought-after coins in all of numismatics because they represent moments when the mint is changing from one specification to another, and somehow, coins get struck using the wrong specifications, creating pieces that technically shouldn't exist according to official mint policy. In the case of the 1981 penny, what happened was that a small number of pennies were accidentally struck on the new zinc planchets that were meant for 1982 production, even though all 1981 pennies were supposed to be struck on the traditional copper planchets, and this created coins that have a 1981 date, but the composition that wasn't officially supposed to be introduced until the following year, making them transitional errors of the most spectacular kind. Think about what had to go wrong for this to happen. The mint facilities in 1981 would have had bins of traditional copper planchets for regular production, but they also would have had experimental zinc planchets on hand for testing purposes. And somehow, someway, those experimental zinc planchets got mixed in with the regular production planchets, and when they went through the striking presses, the dies came down with tremendous force and created 1981 dated pennies on zinc planchets that weren't supposed to exist, and because these were genuine mint products struck on genuine mint planchets with genuine mint dies, they're considered authentic error coins rather than counterfeits or alterations, which is absolutely crucial to their value and collectability. The resulting coins are visually very similar to regular 1981 pennies at first glance, which is why they're so dangerous to spend without careful examination. But there are telltale differences that knowledgeable collectors look for, and if you know what you're looking for, you can identify these incredible errors, potentially finding a $2 million coin hiding in your change jar or in a roll from the bank. The most obvious difference is weight. A regular 1981 copper penny weighs 3.11 grams, while a 1981 zinc penny weighs only 2.5 grams. A difference of more than half a gram, which might not sound like much but is actually very noticeable if you're holding the coins or using a precision scale. And this weight difference is the quickest and most reliable way to identify a potential transitional error without damaging the coin. Another method involves the sound the coin makes when you drop it on a hard surface. Copper pennies have a distinctive ringing tone, while zinc pennies produce a much more dead, dull sound that lacks that musical quality, and experienced collectors can often identify zinc pennies just by the sound they make, though this method is obviously subjective and not as reliable as actually weighing the coin. You can also examine the edge of the coin, looking for any signs of zinc showing through the copper plating, especially if there are any small nicks or areas where the plating has worn away, because zinc has a distinctively different appearance from copper, being much more silvery and gray compared to copper's warm reddish-brown color, though on an uncirculated or well-preserved specimen, you might not see any edge damage that would reveal the underlying metal. The story of how these 1981 zinc pennies were discovered is absolutely fascinating and shows how important it is for collectors to stay curious and questioning about the coins they encounter, because it wasn't immediately obvious that these errors existed. In fact, for years after 1981, nobody really knew to look for them because the official changeover to zinc planchets didn't happen until 1982. So collectors naturally assumed that all 1981 pennies were copper and all 1982 pennies were zinc. And it was only when some particularly observant collectors started weighing their coins and noticed discrepancies that people realized something unusual had happened during 1981 production. The first confirmed specimens caused tremendous excitement in the numismatic community because transitional errors are already rare and valuable, but transitional errors of major U.S. denominations are especially prized. And when it became clear that a small number of 1981 pennies had been struck on experimental zinc planchets, collectors immediately began hunting through their accumulations of 1981 cents, weighing every single one, hoping to find one of these incredible rarities. And while the vast majority of 1981 pennies checked out as normal copper composition, every once in a while, someone would find one that weighed significantly less, confirming it as a genuine zinc transitional error, and those discoveries would send shockwaves through the collecting community. Now, you might be wondering why a transitional error would be worth $2 million when you can buy regular error coins for much less. And the answer comes down to multiple factors that all combine to create exceptional value in the numismatic marketplace. First, there's extreme rarity. While exact population figures are unknown because not every 1981 penny in existence has been weighed and tested, numismatists believe that probably fewer than 10 to 20 specimens exist in known collections, making this error far rarer than famous coins like the 1909 SVDB penny or even the 1943 copper penny. And when you're talking about pieces where there might only be a handful in the entire world, values can reach stratospheric levels because wealthy collectors are willing to pay almost anything to own something that rare. Second, there's condition. The $2 million specimen was in absolutely pristine, gem-uncirculated condition with full original luster, sharp details, and perfect eye appeal, and finding a transitional error in such spectacular condition is incredibly rare because most error coins show at least some circulation since they were released into general circulation through normal banking channels. So a specimen that somehow survived in perfect condition is exponentially more valuable than a worn example. Third, there's authentication and certification. The $2 million coin was certified by PCGS, graded MS-68 or higher, and came with extensive documentation proving its authenticity through metallurgical analysis, weight verification, and edge examination, which is absolutely essential because the potential for counterfeiting transitional errors is significant, with unscrupulous individuals potentially trying to remove copper plating from genuine 1981 pennies or trying to alter dates on genuine zinc pennies from 1982. So third-party certification by a respected grading service is non-negotiable for coins in this value range. Fourth, there's market demand. The Lincoln cent is the most widely collected series in American numismatics, with millions of collectors worldwide working on building complete date and mint mark sets, and serious Lincoln cent collectors are always looking for the ultimate prize pieces to add to their collections, and a transitional error of this magnitude represents the holy grail for Lincoln cent specialists, the kind of coin that elevates a collection from merely impressive to absolutely world-class. And when you have multiple wealthy collectors competing for the same ultra-rare coin, prices can escalate quickly as each bidder tries to outlast the others. The 1981 transitional zinc penny also has historical significance beyond just its rarity because it represents a specific moment in U.S. mint history when the institution was grappling with economic pressures and trying to find ways to reduce production costs while maintaining the integrity and recognizability of America's coinage. And this particular error is physical evidence of the testing and experimentation that was happening behind the scenes at the mint during this transitional period, making it not just a collectible but a historical artifact that tells an important story about American monetary policy and industrial adaptation. When we look at other transitional errors in U.S. coinage history, we see that they consistently rank among the most valuable and sought-after coins in existence. The 1943 copper penny, which was supposed to be made of steel but was accidentally struck on copper planchets left over from 1942, regularly sells for over $100,000 and has sold for over $1 million for exceptional specimens. The 1944 steel penny, which is the reverse error where a steel planchet from 1943 got struck with 1944 dies, is similarly valuable, and the 1974 aluminum penny, which was an experimental piece that technically wasn't supposed to leave the mint but a few specimens did, is considered one of the holy grails of modern coin collecting. So the 1981 zinc transitional penny is in excellent company among the pantheon of great transitional errors. Now, beyond the zinc transitional error, there are other 1981 penny varieties worth searching for that can also bring significant premiums. And this is important because while you're unlikely to find a $2 million transitional error, you might very well find other valuable 1981 varieties that are worth hundreds or thousands of dollars, and knowing what to look for can make the difference between spending a valuable coin and recognizing it for what it is. For instance, 1981 pennies exist with various double die errors, where the design elements show clear doubling especially visible in the date, the words Liberty and I in God We Trust, and in Lincoln's profile, and strong double die 1981 pennies can sell for anywhere from $100 to several $1,000s depending on the severity of the doubling and the condition of the coin, with some varieties showing extremely dramatic doubling that's visible even to the naked eye. There are also 1981 pennies with repunched mint marks, which occurred when the mint mark punch wasn't positioned correctly the first time and had to be punched again, resulting in a mint mark that shows doubling or multiple outlines, and while these are generally less valuable than major double dies, nice examples can still bring premiums of $50 to a few $100s, especially if they're in high grades. Then you have off-center strikes, where the planchet wasn't properly positioned in the collar die when the strike occurred, resulting in part of the design being off the planchet, and dramatic off-center errors where a significant percentage of the design is missing but the date is still visible can bring anywhere from $50 to several $100s depending on the severity and visual appeal. There are also 1981 pennies with die cracks, die breaks, and die clashes, which are all different types of die errors that occur when the dies themselves develop problems during use. And while most of these are minor errors worth just a few dollars, occasionally you'll find a spectacular example with a major die break or dramatic die clash that creates an unusual appearance, and those can bring significant premiums to error collectors who specialize in die varieties. The 1981 Lincoln penny was produced at 3 different mint facilities: Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver, D mint mark, and San Francisco, S mint mark for proof coins only. And this means there are multiple varieties to collect for each type of error, with some mint marks being rarer than others for specific errors, and serious error coin collectors try to assemble complete sets of each error type across all three mints, creating comprehensive collections that showcase the full range of what happened during that year's production. Understanding the minting process helps explain how these errors occur and why they're so fascinating to collectors. Modern coin production involves multiple steps, including planchet preparation, where blank metal discs are cut from strips of metal and then cleaned and processed, annealing, where the planchets are heated to soften the metal for striking, upsetting, where the planchets are passed through an upsetting mill that raises a rim around the edge, and finally striking, where the planchets are fed into high-speed presses that strike them with tremendous force between two dies carrying the obverse and reverse designs. And at each stage of this process, things can go wrong, creating the errors that collectors prize. Quality control at the U.S. Mint involves multiple inspection points where coins are examined visually and mechanically to catch errors before they escape into circulation. But despite sophisticated detection systems and human inspectors, errors still get through because when you're producing literally billions of coins per year, even a detection rate of 99.9% means that thousands of error coins are still going to make it past the inspectors and into circulation, and that's what makes error coin collecting such an exciting treasure hunt, because somewhere out there, in circulation right now, there are error coins waiting to be discovered by someone with the knowledge to recognize what they're looking at. The market for error coins has evolved significantly over the past few decades, with organized error coin collectors forming clubs and associations, attending specialized conventions, and using online forums and social media to share discoveries and trade pieces. And this organized market has helped establish pricing standards and population reports that allow collectors to understand the relative rarity of different errors, which in turn supports strong values for the most desirable pieces, like the $2,001,981 transitional zinc penny. When we consider the investment potential of error coins, we see that historically, major rarities have appreciated significantly over time, often outperforming traditional investments like stocks and bonds, because the supply of any given error coin is absolutely fixed. No more will ever be produced because the mint has corrected the error that created them in the first place. While demand tends to increase over time as more people enter the hobby and as existing collectors upgrade their collections by seeking out better examples, and this supply and demand dynamic creates favorable conditions for price appreciation, especially for the rarest and most desirable errors. The story of the 1981 transitional zinc penny serves as a powerful reminder that fortunes can hide in the most mundane places, that the change jingling in your pocket could potentially include coins worth thousands or millions of dollars, and that taking the time to actually examine your coins instead of just spending them mindlessly could literally change your life. Because while the odds of finding a multimillion-dollar error are admittedly low, the odds of finding some kind of valuable variety or error, if you search diligently through enough coins, are actually quite good. And even finding a double die or off-center strike worth a few $100s would be a significant windfall for most people. So here's what you should do right now if you want to search for valuable 1981 pennies. First, gather up every 1981 penny you can find from your change jar, coin collections, piggy banks, or wherever you keep loose change. Then examine each one carefully under magnification, looking for doubling, off-center strikes, or other obvious errors, and most importantly, weigh every single 1981 penny using a precision scale that measures to at least 0.1 gram accuracy, because if you find one that weighs significantly less than the standard 3.11 grams, you need to have it authenticated immediately by a professional coin grading service, because you might have just found one of the most valuable error coins in existence. The process of having a coin authenticated involves sending it to a service like PCGS or NGC, where experts will examine it using various methods including X-ray fluorescence to determine the metal composition, precise weighing to confirm the planchet type, microscopic examination to verify that it's a genuine mint product and not an altered coin, and if it passes all these tests, they'll encapsulate it in a sealed holder with a label describing the coin and its grade, which provides you with a tamper-proof guarantee of authenticity that will protect you when it comes time to sell and will maximize the price you can achieve. The story of collectors who have found valuable error coins by searching their change is actually more common than you might think. There are documented cases of people finding 1943 copper pennies in circulation as recently as the 2000s. Decades after they were struck, people regularly find valuable double die coins in change because the errors aren't always obvious to casual observers, and metal-detecting hobbyists occasionally find incredible rarities in parks and beaches where people have accidentally dropped valuable coins without realizing what they had. So the lesson is clear. Valuable coins are still out there waiting to be found, and if you develop the knowledge and skills to recognize them, you dramatically increase your chances of making a life-changing discovery. The 1981 Lincoln Penny, whether it's the $2 million transitional zinc error or one of the other valuable varieties from that year, represents everything that makes coin collecting such a thrilling and potentially profitable hobby. It combines history, detective work, specialized knowledge, visual beauty, the thrill of the hunt, and the very real possibility of finding something incredibly valuable in the most ordinary places. And when you hold a coin and realize that you might be looking at an error worth thousands or millions of dollars, there's an excitement and adrenaline rush that few other hobbies can match. As we wrap up our exploration of these two incredible Lincoln pennies, the 1971 wrong planchet error, worth $5.7 million, and the 1981 transitional zinc error worth $2 million. I hope you've gained not just knowledge about these specific coins, but a deeper appreciation for the entire field of error coin collecting and an understanding of why numismatics has captivated millions of people around the world for centuries. Because coins are more than just money. They're historical artifacts, miniature works of art, examples of industrial manufacturing, economic indicators, and sometimes, through errors and varieties, they become incredibly valuable collector's items that can change lives and create fortunes for those lucky and knowledgeable enough to recognize them. So the next time you receive pennies in your change or come across a jar of old coins in your attic or garage, don't just glance at them casually and assume they're all worthless. Take the time to examine them carefully, weigh the ones from key transitional years like 1981 and 1982, look for doubling and off-center strikes and unusual features, because you never know when you might be holding a small copper or zinc disc that could sell for enough money to buy a house, pay off your debts, fund your retirement, or achieve whatever financial dreams you've been working toward. And that possibility, that potential for discovery and fortune, is what makes coin collecting not just a hobby but an adventure, a treasure hunt, and a journey into the fascinating world where history, art, commerce, and human error combine to create objects of extraordinary value and timeless appeal. And now that you know what to look for and what these coins are worth, you have the power to potentially change your own financial future simply by paying attention to the coins that pass through your hands every single day. So get out there, start searching, stay curious, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the next person to discover one of these incredible rare error coins hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone with your knowledge and persistence to recognize it for the treasure it truly is.